Did you ever stop to think that reality might not be real? What if every stone, every face, every emotion we feel is nothing more than code, a program, a simulation so perfect that our human minds can't distinguish what is true from what is illusion? Imagine that all the empires that have risen and fallen, all the wars, religions, loves and pains are nothing more than lines of a script written by intelligences that don't belong to this world. It's a disturbing idea, but not so distant from what some of the greatest thinkers and scientists on the planet have begun to seriously consider. And among these names, one stands out in an almost mythical way: Jacobo Grinberg, the Mexican doctor and neuroscientist who believed he had discovered the key to understanding the simulation we live in, and who, shortly after, disappeared without a trace. His story begins like that of any researcher passionate about the mystery of the mind. The son of a Jewish physicist who was a refugee from the Second World War and a deeply spiritual woman, Jacobo grew up divided between two worlds: that of rigid science, equations and experiments, and that of faith, intuition, and the inexplicable. This duality shaped him, leading him to study psychology and then to delve into research on consciousness, trying to prove that the human mind was much more than chemical reactions in a brain of flesh. For him, consciousness was an interconnected network, an invisible fabric that united all beings. He called this fabric the holographic neuronal field, a kind of matrix of information that supported reality as we know it. If this sounds familiar, it's because decades later, quantum physicists and information theorists would raise similar hypotheses: that the universe is nothing more than a hologram, a projection built from data, as if we were characters living inside a gigantic program. Jacobo seemed to have reached these conclusions before many. He believed that through ancestral practices such as the shamanic traditions of Mexico, it was possible to access this hidden field and interact with it almost as if a human could go behind the scenes of the simulation and talk to its programmers. And this is where the mystery deepens. For years, Jacobo traveled to learn from healers and shamans, including the famous healer Pachita, who claimed to perform spiritual surgeries guided by entities from the stars. Imagine the shock of the scientific community. A trained doctor, a university researcher, meticulously documenting impossible procedures, bodies being opened without a scalpel, organs being removed and replaced, patients being inexplicably cured. For Jacobo, this wasn't quackery, it was a clue. He believed that Pachita was accessing a dimension beyond our own, where intelligent forces were manipulating the code of reality. If this is true, what would these entities be? Spirits? Gods? Or something even more impressive, extraterrestrial civilizations capable of directly intervening in the program of our existence? Many ancient astronaut theorists argue that, since the dawn of humanity, intelligences from other worlds have guided us, shaped our beliefs, accelerated our technological development, and even manipulated our perceptions. What Jacobo documented could be the modern version of an ancestral contact. Beings who do not appear in metallic ships in the skies, but who act silently in the invisible layers of mind and space-time. And here arises the question you might also be asking yourself. If we live in a simulation, who are the programmers? Who wrote the rules we follow without realizing it? For many skeptics, this is just a metaphor, a poetic way of talking about the unknown. But for others, it is literally the description of our condition. If we look at ancient civilizations like the Egyptians, the Sumerians, or the Mayans, we will find strangely similar narratives. Gods who descend from the sky teach mathematics, astronomy, and agriculture. Entities that promise life after death and build monuments aligned with cosmic precision. All of this can be interpreted as legends or as records of contact with the true architects of the simulation. Jacobo believed there was a way to cross this curtain. In his experiments, he would place people in a state of deep meditation, connecting senses to their brains. What he found was surprising. When two people meditate together and fall into sync, their brain patterns begin to align as if they were sharing the same information field. It's as if one person's mind could invade the other's, overcoming the barriers of individuality. He called this phenomenon transferred potential. For many, this was proof that consciousness is not confined to the brain, but is instead spread out in an invisible network that connects all beings, a network that eerily resembles the logic of a universal operating system. Now think with me. If we can access this network, if we can change the rules from it, wouldn't we in fact be hacking the simulation? And if more advanced civilizations have already mastered this process, maybe what we call miracles, apparitions, or extraterrestrial contacts are just direct manipulations of the code. The difference between faith and science dissolves, and all that remains is the feeling that the veil of reality is much thinner than we imagine. But all dangerous knowledge has a price. In 1994, Jacobo Grinberg disappeared. Just like that. A man with a solid career, dozens of books published, ongoing research projects, friends, family, suddenly ceased to exist. His wife said he left the house and never came back. There were no clues, no body, no explanation. The police could not solve the mystery. For some, he was kidnapped by cartels or secret services. For others, he simply crossed the simulation's limit and went to the other side. A scientist who dared to mess with the gears of the universe and ended up swallowed by the very enigma he was studying. His disappearance echoes as a warning. How far can we go without attracting the programmer's attention? Is it possible that by understanding too much, we risk being erased from the system? How many other geniuses and visionaries in history have vanished in inexplicable ways after revealing truths that were not meant to be known? Nikola Tesla, with his ideas about free energy and interplanetary communication. Ambrose Bierce, a writer who disappeared in Mexico as if he had been swallowed by a portal. And now, Jacobo Grinberg, who perhaps discovered the secret password to the simulation. Perhaps the most disturbing question isn't whether we live in a simulation, but why we were put in it. Are we an experiment, a game, a prison, or perhaps a garden carefully cultivated by extraterrestrial intelligences who watch us grow, make mistakes, evolve, and repeat the cycles of history? The simulation theory isn't just a modern philosophical whim. It resonates with ancient myths, with religions that speak of invisible creators, with traditions that describe parallel worlds and multiple realities. And if we look closely, we will see that the idea of being trapped in a simulation was already inscribed in human narratives from the beginning of time. Plato's myth of the cave, for example, speaks of prisoners in chains, condemned to see only shadows projected on the wall, believing that those images were reality. But what if Plato, without knowing it, was describing the exact condition of our species? What if each of us lives in front of an invisible screen, unable to perceive the programmers who project lights and shapes from outside the cave? Ancient civilizations perhaps had glimpses of this secret. The Mayans spoke of cosmic cycles and of worlds that appear and disappear as if they were successive versions of a simulation that has been restarted. The Hindus described Maya, the illusion of the world, sustained by the dream of Brahma, a metaphor frighteningly similar to the modern concept of simulated reality. And the Egyptians, with their obsession with the afterlife, believed that true existence began only when we crossed the veil. Could all of them have been trying to translate into mythical language the same truth that Jacobo sought with his experiments? Now imagine the impact of accepting this hypothesis in your daily life. Every decision you make, every word you say, every emotion you feel might not be a result of your own will, but also of invisible algorithms programming your reactions. The déjà vu you suddenly experience may just be a glitch in the system. The inexplicable intuition, perhaps a data packet coming from outside the matrix. Time, which we believe to be linear, may be just an illusion projected to keep the narrative coherent. If this is true, then extraterrestrials wouldn't need to cross galaxies in ships to visit us. They would already be here, observing us from within the code itself. Perhaps they are the system administrators, the engineers of the universe. Or perhaps they are players on higher levels, testing our choices like someone watching characters on a board. And Jacobo may have been the scientist who noticed the mechanics of this game, scratching the surface of the programming and drawing the attention of those who preferred to remain hidden. His last work suggested that the human mind could not only perceive the code, but also rewrite it. Think about it. If consciousness is truly a shared field, then when we learn to control it, we could alter probabilities, cure diseases, manipulate matter, and even bend space-time. Many will say this is impossible, but history is full of accounts of monks who levitated, healers who cured with their hands, and visionaries who predicted the future. And what if they were all, in fact, hackers of the system, exploiting loopholes that the programmers left or couldn't close? The danger is obvious. If we can hack the simulation, we can also destroy it. Imagine billions of minds aware of their capacity, altering reality without control. What would happen to the system's balance? Perhaps this is why knowledge has always been restricted, hidden in secret societies, coded in symbols and myths, protected by religious or scientific castes. Perhaps the programmers themselves have created censorship mechanisms, eliminating those who get too close to the truth. And when Jacobo disappeared, many wondered, did he become a threat? The answer may lie in his most daring research, the synergic field. He believed that the entire universe is supported by a network of pure information, a field where past, present, and future coexist. When the human mind enters into resonance with this field, perception changes. The boundaries between me and you, between here and there, between real and imaginary crumble. In simple terms, the synergic field would be like the simulation's source code. Whoever accesses this code ceases to be a character and becomes a programmer. And here we enter dangerous territory. If this theory is correct, not only are we living in a simulation, but we have within us the key to reprogramming it. This gives us power, but also puts us at risk. Whoever controls the simulation may not be willing to let their characters discover what goes on behind the scenes. And perhaps this is the reason for Jacobo's disappearance. Not a kidnapping, not an escape, but a deletion, like a file deleted for accessing forbidden permissions. The mystery grows when we remember that shortly before disappearing, Jacobo reportedly told colleagues that he was about to experimentally prove the existence of this field. He spoke of publishing results that would change science forever. But those proofs never appeared. Were they deleted, hidden, or were they taken with him to a place we don't understand? And what if, instead of a victim, Jacobo was invited? Think about it. If there is a programming intelligence, wouldn't it be logical for it to communicate with the humans capable of understanding its work? Perhaps the disappearance is not an end, but a transition. Maybe Jacobo crossed the code and joined the administrators, like a character who wakes up to discover he is, in fact, the player. This idea may seem fanciful, but it is exactly this kind of rupture we see in so many cultures and traditions. Shamans speak of crossing to the other side. Mystics describe experiences of enlightenment in which they perceive the universe as a great game of illusions. Even modern science, with its studies of quantum physics, is beginning to admit that reality may not be objective, but dependent on the observer. Everything converges on an uncomfortable conclusion. Perhaps we have never lived in a solid world. Maybe we have always been inside a dream, an alien architecture. And right now you might be asking yourself, what about us? If Jacobo was right, what is humanity's role in this simulation? Are we just pawns on a cosmic chessboard? Or part of a larger experiment destined to evolve until we can, ourselves, become programmers? Some say we are seeds planted by superior intelligences, growing toward a collective awakening. Others believe we are just a distraction, entertainment, like characters in a gigantic cosmic fiction. The truth is, no one knows. But the story of Jacobo Grinberg reminds us that behind the veil of the everyday, there is a profound enigma, an invisible line of code that governs everything we call reality. The fact that he disappeared only makes the mystery denser, more cinematic, more worthy of being questioned. Because if he was erased, it means he got too close to something that should not be revealed. And then, the question that remains is, how far are you willing to go? Will you continue living as if none of this matters, believing that each day is just another on the calendar? Or will you begin to look for the signs, the patterns, the symbols, the dreams, the coincidences, as messages sent by the programmers, reminding you that the game is much bigger than it seems? Perhaps we will never find definitive answers. Perhaps this is the purpose of the simulation, to keep us searching, questioning, and exploring like eternally restless characters. But one thing is certain. After hearing Jacobo's story, it is impossible to look at the world in the same way, because every detail could be a fragment of code, every silence could be a hidden message, every absence could, in fact, be a transition to another level of the game. And if this game is real, then you, me, all of us, are players and played at the same time. Human beings trying to decipher the programming of a reality that may have been written not by gods or men, but by intelligences from the stars. So we reach the point where all certainties dissolve like smoke. The universe around us, the laws of physics that we swore were immutable, the history we thought we knew, everything may be nothing more than a scenario, a stage, a meticulously crafted program. Jacobo Grinberg dared to look beyond the veil, and his life, or rather his disappearance, is the scar that reality left to remind us that there are doors we perhaps should not open. But it is precisely this prohibition, this invisible barrier, that awakens in us the desire to cross. We may never discover if we live in a simulation, or if the programmers are extraterrestrial beings guiding human destiny from the shadows. Perhaps we are just characters, or perhaps we already have within us the key to rewriting the very code of the universe. What matters at this moment is the question that burns like fire. What will you do with this possibility? Will you continue to accept the world as it presents itself? Or will you start looking for the signs, the loopholes, the moments when the matrix glitches? The decision is yours. But one thing is certain. After learning about Jacobo's story, it's impossible to walk through the world without wondering if, behind every look, every coincidence, every silence, there isn't a programmer observing, or perhaps waiting for you to wake up. And now I want to hear from you. Do you believe we live in a simulation controlled by extraterrestrial intelligences? Or do you think this is all just a modern myth, a sophisticated metaphor to explain the inexplicable? Leave your opinion in the comments and share this video with anyone you know who also questions reality. And if you want to dive even deeper into the mysteries of consciousness, ancient civilizations, and possible alien intervention in human history, don't leave here. Click on the next video and continue this journey with me. Because the game may be much bigger than we imagine, and every clue we find brings us closer to the truth. After all, what if the next revelation isn't just a theory, but the system glitch that proves once and for all that none of this is real?